And we are live. Good evening and welcome to OmniBros Live. I'm Omnidog from Omnidog's Vault, joined as always by Ryley Mo, the Omnibus Collector himself. Ryley, how's it going, dude?
Doing really well, Jess. Thank you very much.
And we have a special guest, Land Host 27 himself, Tyler.
He makes a triumphant return. Pew, 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 pew. With his spinner. Like, could he be more bland? Probably not.
And do you still have your pink camouflage?
I have my special pink camouflage necklace that gives me extra powers, like annoyance and disappointment from my wife.
Nice. And we're only a minute late, so don't be jamming us up in there, comparing us to Guns N' Roses, who are like 4 hours late to their close.
I mean, if they were expecting us at our, then they're an hour late, but you announced well ahead of time that we were going to be late today.
Right, yeah. Due to circumstances beyond my control and the fact that we just decided to do it at 9, that's what we're doing. We're doing it at 9. We're doing it at 9.
I mean, it feels like 8 to me.
We'll do it at 9.
It feels like 8 to me. How about you, Riley? What time does it feel like for you over there?
It really feels like 8.
I mean, it feels super like 8 right now.
It's like, it feels exactly like 8:03 at this moment.
You guys and your wacky meridian timetable. So before we get going on tonight's episode, let's talk about InStockTrades.com, where you can get your collected editions up to 50% off. Loyalty discounts add 2% to that. Every quarter, there's a Omnibroslive quarterly discount code. Over $50 in an order gets you free shipping in the United States. The best possible service and fabulous, fabulous packaging. That's InStockTrades.com.
And I heard they're having a Christmas special right now, where if you buy any book between now and Christmas, they pack it extra with Christmas love.
Christmas love, nice.
Yeah, they pack it all in there. It's amazing. You don't want to miss out on that. Trust me.
That's right. Christmas love is always good. So, Into the Spider-Verse is coming out tomorrow. I know for a fact that Tyler is practically vibrating with excitement to see this movie.
I am.
Ryley, are you equally as excited to see this movie?
I'm very excited to see this movie. However, my wife, when I approached her about, hey, when are we going to see it this weekend? She said, no. And I said, what? And she said, I'm not saying that you can't see it. I'm saying I'm not going to go see it with you. And I was like, well, I don't like doing things by myself, so I guess I am not seeing this movie this weekend.
Oh, that's awful. I also hate going to movies by myself. That's why I have made sure I got a movie buddy to see all the superhero movies with me.
Yeah, I too had the exact same experience with my wife. I was like, hey, when are we going to go see Spider-Verse? She was like, nope.
So are you taking your daughter or something?
I'm taking, I mean, I wish I could, but she's got school, so I'm going with a dumb friend. Oh. It's okay. He's not watching this right now. He's at work. It's totally fine.
He's at work at 9 o'clock at night?
I know. He's a dumb nurse anesthetist. Like, get a real job. Do something during the day. Jeez.
Nurse anesthetist? You have him bring some samples from work.
Yeah, seriously. We'll really enjoy the movie tomorrow.
Yeah. Sounds like a great job. So what do we know about, let's see, we were going to talk about Spider-Man, but what do we know? See, I don't know anything about Into the Spider-Verse, the movie, so I figured you guys probably know more. Like, why should I see this?
Why should you not see it?
Don't answer my question with a question.
Well, Jess, you've got like an infestation of spiders hanging on your wall behind you.
That is
so I
true.
think it would be a safe bet to say that you're a little into the Spider-Verse yourself.
That is true. I do like my spiders.
And for anybody who has ever liked a Spider-Man movie in theaters, I can almost guarantee you, just based off of the reviews that were all bought and paid for by Marvel, that it is going to be by far the best in theater Spider-Man adaptation yet.
Including live action?
Yeah, and definitely including live action. I mean, okay, here's the pitch. It's a more there is more things they can translate from comics to the big screen in animated film than they could ever imagine doing in a live action movie. And because of that, and because they're taking a more serious approach to the movie, and I don't mean serious like rated R, but I mean not TVY4 Ultimate Spider-Man on Disney type of approach. It's going to be really good. I'm extremely excited.
And are they going to work in like Spider-Ham and Spider-Gwen and things like that? Is this like Spider-Man book?
Yeah, this is, well, I mean, it's going to be loose. The idea of a bunch of spider people from a bunch of different universes is what's going to be in the film. So it's not, I don't think it's necessarily going to follow the storyline from the Spider-Verse in the comic event, but it definitely is going to have all of those characters. And so, yeah, I mean, the real answer to your question is Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen on the big screen. Like, that's why you go see the movie.
Right. Okay, good. Well, you pretty much sold me. If I had unlimited funds, I'd jet to Austin and go see it with you, Ryley, but I don't have unlimited funds anymore. I spent it all on books.
I understand that problem.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's I think it's a real exciting venture that they're going into with this movie, and I've been really pumped for it since they first announced it. The idea of making, you know, like Tyler described it as a serious you know, animated film. They're not just doing some, I mean, obviously it's meant for all ages, kids and adults alike can watch it, but they're putting forth something with serious effort, and not just some, you know, Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel type, you know, film. It's, you know, something that's got a pedigree to it, if you will, I think.
Yeah.
And it really makes some deep cuts. I mean, you get your Miles Morales, you get Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider, I think is what they're going to start calling her. You do get Spider-Ham, you get the Spider-Man Noir, you get, like, the Prowler is in there. So it's Scorpion. You're getting all kinds of things that you've never seen on screen before, and they're really expanding on what people already know and just making this whole Spider-Verse. I mean, it's literally what it's called. It's Into the Spider-Verse, and I think it's a great title because it's kind of sets up that idea that there is more to come. This is just the peak, you know, of this mountain of material that they could go into, and I think it's going to be awesome because have we really had a serious cinematic animated superhero film like this? Big Hero 6 came out, and that was great.
Yeah. Batman Mask of the Phantasm is the last one that I can remember being in theaters.
Back in, what, 1994 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is awesome. It's exciting. It's like a dream come true. And like you said, there's a lot of stuff that can be translated from comic better on the screen in an animated film. Just, you know, not having to worry about suspension of disbelief going into, like, you know, effects and stuff like that, where in like a live action movie you have to worry about, like, oh, is this gonna look too CG? Is this gonna like take the viewer out of it? Like, you know, can you absolutely tell that all of a sudden, you know, this is not a guy in a costume, but it's a computer thing? Like, it's animated, so you know it's all, none of it's a guy in a costume. You know what to expect. And it's awesome because they can do so much more and still suspend the disbelief of the viewer and make these just beautiful, this beautiful cinematic experience. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, is seeing something that represents what I have in my head when I read these comics, and just have it come to colorful, vibrant life in front of my eyes.
Absolutely. So one of the coolest things from the trailer, and this is my understanding from the trailer, though, they sure make it seem like, you know, it's with a much older, more seasoned Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And in the trailer, they make it, he starts off the trailer by saying, like, well, you know me, I'm Spider-Man. I got the girl, I saved the world. But when he's talking, they show a picture of him upside down kissing Mary Jane and fighting Doc Ock. So they almost make it seem like this movie is animated, but it's in canon with the Sam Raimi movies, which I thought was kind of cool. Like at the very least, like a throwback to those movies, which was kind of neat.
I think it'd be fair enough to say, like, I mean, we'll all find out whenever we watch the film, like, how well it can line up with that. But I think it'd be very cool to see this as a follow-up to that universe, because that universe was so many people's introduction to comic books and introduction to Marvel superheroes.
So Jess, I got a question for you and Ryley, because Ryley mentioned it just a second ago, and for the chat. How do you guys feel about Ghost Spider? The name, you know, she's been known as Spider-Gwen in the comics now since she came out. That was kind of like a fan nickname, and then obviously she had her own series. How do you guys feel about the name Ghost Spider for her?
What is the origin of that? Was that a TV thing?
I think it was the original, where that name came from, if I'm not mistaken, was in the TV show like Rising.
Yeah.
And it's a TV show meant for a younger audience, and it's got mostly female superhero characters and like one or two male characters. I think it's Squirrel Girl and America Chavez, and then Ghost Spider, and it was Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
Yes. So Ghost Spider, I think they wanted to use that name just to not have the younger, newer audiences confuse her with Spider-Woman, other Spider-Women. Because in the comics, in her universe, she is called Spider-Woman. She's obviously not Spider-Gwen, because that's her secret identity. But we, like you mentioned, kind of the fans' nickname for her when she first appeared, crossover character on the cover, they called her Spider-Gwen. And it just stuck because we already have a Spider-Woman. We had a Spider-Woman ongoing series at the time. And it's just the name that kind of stuck there. And I think in the comics, she even mentions, like, you know, it's not the title she goes by. She's not Spider-Gwen. Like, she is Spider-Woman. And so I think basically by giving her this new title, it continues to go along with that, like, not cheapening her by calling her by a nickname, but by giving her her own identity to also separate her from existing characters. And I think that in what they're trying to go for, what they're trying to accomplish with name, it's successful and it's a decent name. I prefer just calling her Spider-Woman or just Gwen. But I understand the need for it, and I don't necessarily mind it, I'll say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't mind it. Ghost Spider. I love the character of Spider-Gwen, so I'm just excited to see her in any shape and or form. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I saw the Marvel Uprising. I saw the prequel and really liked it.
Yeah.
And the Ghost Spider name probably wouldn't have been my first choice for her. I'm with you, Rye. I wish they had called her just like Spider-Woman or something, but I understand why they did it. They wanted to give her something that was different than anybody before. And, it's just so interesting to me. The Spider-Mans, and they've had tons of Spider-Man spinoff characters that haven't picked up steam like Miles and Spider-Gwen have in recent years. My favorite probably was Aranya. Absolutely loved her. But it is interesting to me in an era where Marvel really tried a bunch of new characters. Two of the most successful were Spider spinoffs, which was Spider-Gwen and Miles Morales. And so I like that they're giving her her own name, that they really want, because that, to me, that shows that they recognize that she's a character that's not just a spinoff character to be like dealt with just in the Spider-Verse event in the comics, but like maybe that tells me, hey, we want to make her more of her own standalone character that we can use moving forward in media and comics, which excites me because I really like the character, and I would have hated to have seen her kind of get pushed aside as just some other Spider-Verse character like the 100 we got in the comics that just came and then left.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's it's definitely a good sign for her future as a character.
Jay wants to know, can we just call her Scarlet Spider? Oh, that name.
There was actually a good question earlier that I thought we could address, and that was, oh, well, Real Slim Shady had a couple. Is the Miles Morales original Ultimate Spider-Man Bendis series good? And is the Spider-Gwen series good as well?
Man, I really like both of those series.
Me too. Thumbs up, double thumbs up on both series. And I was very skeptical going into the Miles Morales especially. I was super skeptical and came away really enjoying it.
Yeah, and I've only read Spider-Gwen, but she's one of my favorite characters. I have some serious Spidey reading to do. But
Spider-Gwen, just that series, it has such a fun kind of aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
It's like this glow in the dark radioactive visual to it that works so well. Robbie Rodriguez's artwork there, he designed the costume and the character, the use of these like highlighter colors almost, like, you know, day glow blue and pink, a lot of places, neon colors, the backgrounds. He's made this world that she's from definitively different from all of the others. Writing by Jason Latour, he does really well to adopt a lot from the Spider-Man mythos. What Bendis did back when he did Ultimate Comics and moved it forward in some different way, he does that, but it's like even more skewed than Bendis's Ultimate stuff was, because you have like very different takes on very familiar characters, whereas like Ultimate, it was like, this is very familiar and it's pretty similar but basically just updated for as a modern take. But in Latour and Rodriguez's Spider-Gwen series, it's like almost this cracked mirror image of the 616 Marvel Universe. I definitely recommend checking it out. For me, it was just instantaneously, I just wanted more of it, so I was happy that she got her own mini and then turned into an ongoing series for sure.
And then Real Slim Shady also has a good question. Your favorite alternative Spider-Man? Who's your favorite alternative Spider-Man? If we are talking about favorite alternative Spider-Man, I am going to say that I love Silk and Spider-Gwen as my alternative. And then he follows it up, and what is one thing Spider-Man does or has done, or something you don't agree about of that, and why? What's something that Spider-Man, not counting One More Day, what is one thing Spider-Man does or has done that you don't agree with? I thought those were a couple of good questions.
Well, for my favorite alternative Spider-Man, this guy right there, Ben Ryley. Love me some Scarlet Spidey. Understand and don't even disagree with all the hate that that the original Scarlet Spidey series got in the 90s, but that was the Spider-Man that I grew up with, largely in part. When I got into comics, that was kind of the era I grew up in. So He was definitely my favorite alternate Spider-Man up until the what was the Clone Conspiracy? Up until the Clone Conspiracy, and now his individual series. I'm not a huge fan of his individual series that he's got now, but he's still my favorite. Love the hoodie. Big fan of the hoodie.
I think for me, it's a toss-up, leaning more towards Superior Spider-Man, but the other one would be 2099. But the reason I don't lean all the way towards 2099 is because for him it's more like conceptually I really love the character, and I've enjoyed everything that I've read of modern, but I never read the original 2099 Spider-Man series. So I it's on my docket, you know, my plan to go back and read that stuff. But I keep telling myself, like, don't buy the trades, because once you do, you know they're going to do an omnibus. So, you know, my fingers are still crossed that I'm correct in my hesitance. But I love the design. He's such a different looking character. The weird like skull looking thing on his costume with the like
the Day of the Dead costume.
Yeah, it's got the like web cape on the back and the claws and everything. Just a very different Spider-Man, but still obviously a Spider-Man character. Such a cool looking character. And then everything I've read, like I said, in the modern stuff, when he kind of came back during Slott's Superior run,
I love that.
Really solidified him as a favorite for me.
So this guy right here?
Yeah, that's him.
Right here. Okay, right there.
So good.
And then later he had that white costume,
which was cool. I didn't like it at first, but I really liked it by the end.
But Superior would also, because I've actually read all of the Superior stuff, so I have a better, more solid opinion on that. And I really enjoyed that era of Spider-Man.
I'm in the same boat as you in that, well, similar boat. I've got all the singles of Spider-Man 2099, so that series also came out when I first started collecting comics. It was one of the first series that I started collecting. So I've read all of the original series, and I've been like this close so many times to getting it custom bound. But every time I'm like, just hold out. Just hold out. They might release an omnibus. Just don't do it. I really want to.
Taylor Brown says, my audio sounds fuzzy and like I'm talking into a tin can. So let me go, while you guys talk about something Spidey-ish, let me go see if I can find some kind of headphones. Because that's my problem.
While you're looking there, talking about Superior, which was amazing. Totally agree. Mm-hmm. That was probably the biggest thing that I've ever read that I read the idea, like when they announced what was happening in Spider-Man 700, and thought, this is the dumbest thing I have ever read. To go from there to actually reading it and just falling in love with it, like that was probably the biggest flip-flop for me that I've ever made on comics. But I love that. I love his place in the comics now, like where he's at as a character. Have you been reading the current Spidey? I'm about 6 issues behind on the current Spidey, but I read the one-shot, the Superior Octopus. Absolutely loved it.
And have you been on Spider-Geddon?
So I stopped right before Spider-Geddon was where I stopped, and I need to catch up. Have you been reading it?
Yeah, it's if you enjoyed the Spider-Verse crossover from before, it's basically that again, but like bigger.
Really?
Like they just keep throwing more and more and more and more like new Spider-Man at you. And it's like I think that they're like, hey, we really struck gold with Gwen and you know, people love like all these different handful of characters. Let's see how many new characters we can come up with, and let's see what sticks. And there's just some bizarre stuff. Like one of them is called Spiders Man, and it's a bunch of spiders in a costume that thinks that they're like, it's a collective unit, a collective thought that they believe that they are Peter Parker. So that it's like bizarre stuff like that. And
that's great.
There's a mini series, Edge of Spider-Geddon, that acts like Edge of Spider-Verse, where it'll introduce one-shot stories. And then there's another mini series. It's like Spider-Man or Spider-Geddon, like an anthology type thing, where it's like 3 issues, and each issue has like 3 mini stories in it. And so it's just a short, like 8-page story introducing another spider into the Spider-Verse. So if you like seeing a lot of alternate Spider-Men, that's the series that'll give you a ton of them.
I'm excited about that. Who have you had one that has stuck out as like, oh, this one's really cool, or maybe this one could translate beyond this event or anything like that? Or are they all kind of just on the same generic, generic, but level?
They're all like, mostly it's just like, okay, they're just trying to come up with some decent ideas. I think that they expanded a little bit on Spider, the SP//RR or whatever, like the one that Gerard Way wrote that kind of looks like Evangelion.
Yeah.
They expanded on that and made like a Venom version of that.
Oh, cool.
Right here.
Yeah.
And
right here.
Yeah, they made like a Venom version of that. And it's really cool. So they're kind of pushing that forward. The one that I mentioned, the Spiders Man, was just a really funny concept.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
There's another one in there that they've been using a lot that's like it's like Uncle Ben had not died, and so he's like teamed up with a younger Peter Parker, and they're like a duo together. That one was
that's cool.
But mostly it's just like the ones that already existed. They're kind of just using them and pumping them up a little bit more. And it's also really cool because they used the video game PS4 Spider-Man is now.
I read that issue, actually. That was the one issue of it that I did read that I loved, because I loved that game. That game was my game of the year, just totally. And I was so happy to see him in any medium other than just the
both of you guys finished that game, right?
I definitely
haven't played the DLC yet, but I finished it.
I haven't done that. Yeah, I've been waiting for... I decided I'd just go ahead and wait for it to conclude.
Me too.
Go ahead and get the whole thing at once, because it sounds like it's a pretty decent amount of content. Like a pretty decent length of story.
Yeah, Joseph has played it and has loved every second of it. Like, absolutely.
The downloadable stuff, you're waiting until it's all released?
Because it's going to be a 3-part deal, and I think the 3rd part comes out, what, January or something?
Yeah, they just dropped the trailer for it either today or yesterday. And it looks great.
And you get a bunch of new costumes and stuff too, which, you know, they're kind of pointless, but they're also kind of the most fun part of that game. Is
yeah, definitely.
The new costumes. You just get to pretend that you're Miguel O'Hara and stuff, and swing around in the 2099. Man, that was a great game, and plot written by Slott and Kristan Gage, and
it's a good story. I mean, it really hit me a couple of times, dude, where I was like, "Wow, I did not expect to feel this way and to think these things about a Spider-Man video game."
Yeah.
But then again, Slott's the best Spider-Man writer of all time. So, what can you? I actually low-key love Slott, but I know that
I know, because the last time we had you on the show, or at least the last time that we were on the show together, you got to wax on about your love of Slott.
Oh, that's right.
We talked about all the writers that, you know, we feel like we can count on, and I know that you brought up Dan Slott, and he's controversial because a lot of people were not a huge fan of his run. But the thing that you mentioned about Slott's run on Spider-Man that I strongly agree with is that it allowed for Peter to evolve.
Yeah.
It really pushed him into becoming a more mature character. Which for me was a really important note for him. And I know a lot of people disagreed with it, but when I had people tell me, like, you know, I don't like this because Peter should be, down in the dumps because of his Parker luck and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hey man, the evolution of this character is just, it's like, feels real to me.
Yes, super organic.
It's this real and organic, and it's relatable, which is one of the things that I feel like Spider-Man has always been, if anything, one of the more relatable characters. Absolutely. And I don't mean like because everyone's going out there and getting bit by a radioactive spider, and then all of a sudden they can on walls and they're upset that their uncle got killed, and it's kind of, they should have done something about it. No, that's not what I mean. But like, he's dealing with relatable issues, and early in his comics, it's you know, problems at school and bullies and girls and balancing all that with having to be responsible for fighting against villains. But as he grows up, as we all do, your responsibilities change and your responsibilities get greater. And Peter is now no longer just living at home with Aunt May eating wheat cakes. He's getting his own apartment and his, you know, serious relationships, and he's needing to have a more of a job than just taking pictures and hoping he gets enough money to pay the bills from J. Jonah Jameson. And Dan Slott really pushed that forward in getting him, you know, he's worked for schools and stuff before. He's done all that stuff, but Dan Slott took him and he's like, hey, Peter's scientifically a genius, and I want to work with that and give him a position at Horizon, this new company that he created for his run that is going to I'm pretty sure that's correct. I'm pretty sure Horizon wasn't around before that. So he created that run, gave Peter a job there, gets him to have a position that makes sense, that utilizes his genius.
Absolutely.
And it's like, that feels like such an organic growth that's so relatable, because that's like, you know, me growing up and moving out of my home and finishing school and getting a job and, you know, providing for myself and my family. And I'm watching Peter do that same thing as I'm doing it in my real life. And it's, you know, it's relatable and it's kind of inspiring to watch a hero that I've grown up with going through all the same evolutions that I am.
So Slott wrote for like something crazy, like 10 years, right? What?
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to read all of that, is it all collected yet? Or is it a big chunk of it collected?
It's all collected in some form.
So I'm going to go through the easiest way right now, because Slott, I guess I don't have to yell because I have the headset on. Slott, Slott wrote Spider-Man a little bit before he took over as the sole writer, and that was post One More Day. It was something that they called the Spidey Brain Trust era. And he was one of several writers. He wrote a few arcs that actually got some good attention. And then he took over during what they called Big Time. And that was issue number 648, where he became the sole writer on the series. Big Time is collected in its entirety, along not only with Slott's material, but with a bunch of miniseries and one-shots that connect to it from other writers across these 4 complete collection paperbacks. I think that they're all still available in print. Don't quote me on that, but I think that they're available still. And all 4 of these comprises everything that leads up to Superior Spider-Man.
Oh, okay. Good.
There's nothing missing in between these. You get the complete story. You really don't have to look anywhere else. So they make it nice and easy in this one 4-volume package. And then Superior Spider-Man, for me, I've got the 3 volumes of the oversized hardcovers, but they're re-releasing that now in paperbacks, in complete collection paperbacks. And that's like his second part of his ongoing run. And then after that, it gets a little bit less, it's a little bit more back and forth with stuff, because he has he starts up on Amazing Spider-Man again, and that is collected across these 2 oversized hardcovers. And after that, he jumps back on for another volume of the series that is collected in these oversized hardcovers called Worldwide. And there are 3 of them out, but there's also a 4th one titled Amazing Spider-Man Red Goblin. But there's like material missing in between that's only available in like a smaller paperback. So I don't have all of that to show, but that's Slott's run. That's his whole mega deal.
So Lloyd asks if he could just leave Brand New Day and jump into Big Time. You definitely could, but I do think you would be missing a good era and a great jumping on point at Brand New Day. Brand New Day was obviously insanely controversial when it came out because they were undoing the marriage of Mary Jane and Peter Parker, which was pretty much universally hated by everybody. In fact, when that issue came out, I've said this before, but that's what actually caused me to quit collecting in single issues. I didn't touch a comic for at least 5 years, maybe longer, because I was just so upset and just disgusted over the fact they did it. But when I actually went back and gave it a read and gave it a chance, I actually fell in love with the run. Like, it had some stuff that had some highs and lows. It wasn't just like the best thing I've ever read. But the thing I liked a lot about it was the idea of the brain trust, which Ryley mentioned, and that's what we call it, or that's what people call it, is because leading up to that, and now, like, you can look at shelves, there's all these different Spider-Man spinoffs, and then it was like Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Adjectiveless Spider-Man, and they basically said, all right, let's do away with all Spider-Man titles except for Amazing Spider-Man, and we're gonna have a writer and an artist. We're gonna pair them together, and they're gonna do an arc, and we're just gonna kind of rotate. And it wasn't always, I don't think it was always one person per arc. Like, sometimes they would switch up authors, but that was the general concept. It was one issue a week, and there were no other additional Spider-Man books for a time. And so everything was just collected in this nice, one straightforward package. And it was literally done to be a jumping on point for Spider-Man. So they created new friends for Spider-Man. They had old friends come back, new villains, old villains, but it was really good, really enjoyable. And they've collected it in, is it a complete collection or an ultimate collection? They've done 2 or 3 of them, and they're really reasonably priced for the amount of material you get.
Yeah, they're complete collections, much like the Slott ones. And right now there are 4 of these, and this goes through a good chunk of that material. But there's another one coming out that's going to be, because this goes through the beginning of Brain Trust at 546, and then the 4th volume gets through 601, and then there's another volume coming out that's called New Ways to Live, kind of a play on the New Ways to Die arc that was written by Dan Slott, and that's going to lead into the Gauntlet era of Spider-Man, which I'm sure that means they're going to do some complete collections for that as well.
They will. And that was, I don't remember what it was on InStock Trades, InStockTrades.com, but it was really reasonably priced and a great pickup. Like, if you're somewhat interested in Spider-Man, I would suggest picking that up, or you can just jump into big time for your modern day Spidey. But I think you'll miss some good stories. Somebody pointed out, Taylor Brown, that it was the 2nd volume of that covers the Spider Island arc, which I thought was fantastic.
Of big time, yeah. So yeah, Brand New Day Complete Collection Volume 1 on InStock Trades at 42% off. Cover price is $23.19, and that's for like a pretty thick volume of material. And it is controversial material, and I think a lot of it is due to exactly what you were saying, people just being upset about what just came before. But if you're looking for a jumping on point, this definitely is a really great one, because it honestly is such a fresh start for the character.
Yeah.
And it builds up a lot of stuff. There was a lot of payoff. Like,
yes.
I came on to reading Spider-Man weekly, or almost weekly as it was coming out, with issue like 590 or something like that. And they had already done a lot of Brand New Day stuff. They had just come off of the whole Election Day arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That had the famous Barack Obama variant cover. And so I missed a lot of that stuff, and I read forward, and I absolutely loved what came after that, because that got into the Gauntlet, which was where the Brain Trust was going one author at a time, throwing Spidey against one of his biggest villains.
That was so good.
It was such a great era of the book. So you had him go up against Vulture and Rhino again, and every villain. Lizard had a really good one, and it all culminated.
Lizard was my favorite, and good payoff, like you said, in the end of that arc. Like, there was some good payoff and made sense why it was all happening.
And it was like all of this stuff, because I went back and then I read from Brand New Day from the beginning and just read all the way through what I had just missed. And I was like, man, there's so much stuff that I missed before that really pays off later. So that all said, you don't have to go back to the beginning of the Brain Trust era with Brand New Day, but if you're willing to make the commitment and the investment, I think personally that it's worthy. It's worthwhile.
Totally agree.
Awesome.
Jess, we've just been going on and on and on about Spider-Man comics that we really like.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I think it's great too, but I also want to think it's great that you talk about the Spider-Man comics that you really like.
Oh, well, see, I would say I'm more familiar with Silver Age Spidey than I am modern Spidey. And that's just because for the past 5 years, I've been trying. I grew up a DC guy, and so, but I liked Spider-Man as well. So I have various issues of Spider-Man in my collection. But for the past 5 years, I've just been trying to get a Marvel education where I'm reading and reading and reading all this Marvel stuff, and I just haven't got to Spider-Man yet.
Yeah.
So my knowledge is basically, you know, the wheat cakes and his 90-year-old aunt. Somehow he's 18 years old with a 90-year-old aunt.
She didn't exactly look like Marissa Tomei in the comics.
No, she sure didn't.
Not at that point, no.
No. So my favorite stuff was because he was, as you say, he was relatable. Mm-hmm. He had all the anxieties that a high school student would have, especially one that got picked on, had a crush on the unattainable girl. You know, Flash Thompson relentlessly teased him, and even when he, you know, would get some success, you know, he couldn't cash the check because he couldn't reveal his secret identity, and so there's always something that was messing him up. That Peter Parker luck, as you said, that was always messing him up. And I'm just going to base this on maybe the first 100 and I don't know, take it up to Punisher through 129, take it up to I don't know, the first 3 Omnis, say. But he would always he would never be able to get ahead, even when he got ahead, which is kind of what I liked about what you're talking about with these Dan Slott issues. Mm-hmm. is that he really grew and branched out and accomplished things and kept moving forward, and so that sounds interesting to me, because I dug what they did with Spider-Man back in the 60s and 70s, like the drug issues. I thought that was I remember that was a big deal, where they just decided to go ahead and deal with drugs and not have the Comics Code Authority seal on there, which was a big deal back then. So I remember really liking that. Of course, I remember the shocking issues 121 and 122 with the death of I'm going to spoil it for you. Gwen Stacy dies. Sorry, and then Green Goblin. Somehow I ended up not only having those issues, but I kept them in like awesome shape. So I still have them in my safe deposit box in unbelievable shape. But actually, the point of this was that they were going to kill a character. That'd be like killing Lana Lang in Superman, or Jimmy Olsen or something. And I mean, they killed Gwen.
Yeah.
Where do you go from here? I mean, wow, that's amazing that they would do that. Not that I'm in favor of killing people, but I'm just saying, as far as change and willing to take a chance, Spider-Man was always the comic for that, I always thought.
And that's something that, you know, there wasn't a revolving door on death at that time. So those deaths are still solid. I mean,
Yeah.
sure, we just spent 15 minutes talking about Spider-Gwen, but as far as 616 Marvel Gwen Stacy, she's
dead.
been out. She's gone. She's been dead since what was that 120, 121, 122.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man has, moved on with his life, and he moved on like any of us would if someone important to us dies, and it's something that's always on his mind. She's someone that he always thinks about, and he's always thinking back to, and there's, there's a lot of power in something like that.
There's a lot of layers to that story that have stuck with him, but also in terms like you guys were saying, I mean, that was literally the end of an era. Like, we look back to those issues and say that capped an era of comics and started a new era because of just the shock value of like, oh my gosh, killed somebody in comics. Like, this is crazy. There was one thing that I wanted to touch on, what you were, both of you guys were talking about, but like Peter Parker and how he was super relatable and he would always have something that he had to do that conflicted with what he wanted to do. And it reminded me of an interview you guys did. I think it was with Fabian. And he was talking about the old editorial mandate of, I might be getting this wrong, and maybe it's one in the chat, or maybe you guys remember, but it was like something like can't but must. And it originated with Peter Parker about how when they would write Peter Parker stories and Spider-Man stories, they would write it from a can't and must standpoint, where it was Peter Parker can't miss this important thing in his life, but he must, because he has to go do something that he knows is for the best for humanity, not for himself individually. Which I thought was, I enjoyed hearing him talk about that, and I never thought about it from that light, but like that is Peter Parker's, that is his character to a T. Like, everything happens to him that conflicts with like his own personal gain is always conflicting with doing the right thing, and he always chooses to do the right thing even at the expense of himself. And I think that's why his stories are interesting.
I think that well, number one, thank you for reminding me of that, because I forgot about that specific thing that Fabian had mentioned. Yeah, that was a really cool, that was a lot of why I really liked I didn't talk to you, but as Fabian himself mentioned, but I listened a lot, and that was one of the things I really liked, was hearing about editorial stuff. But this is skipping back to what Slott did. I think that when Slott started writing Superior Spider-Man, that was like Peter Parker no longer being in that can't but must, because Otto Octavius was just, it was like, why not? Like, he came up with all of the solutions for how he could get what he wants, and he started, because throughout that series there was a lot of evolution for Otto feeling like he had to keep actually doing good, and he found out how he could have his cake and eat it too, so to say. It was just a lot of like, Peter is inherently selfless because of the one time that he was selfish. He lost someone that meant more to him than anything in the world. And so he spent the rest of his life deciding that he will forever be selfless and always put what he wants secondary to what's better for, not even for people that he loves, but for the world, like you said, like for the whole world and everyone around him. But then Otto comes along and he's like, screw it. I love myself. I want things for myself, and I'm going to have everything. And I'm also going to continue helping the world because, honestly, let me just rub it in Parker's face that I can do his job better than he could.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of like, it just shows that Slott knew what made Peter tick, and he just turned it on its head and really did something cool with it.
And Jess, this is a small spoiler, but Otto doesn't remain Spider-Man forever. I know that's hard for you to comprehend, but he doesn't remain Spider-Man forever. But that was probably my favorite thing about Peter coming back. And let me just pause here and say, my biggest fear in comics right now, my biggest fear is that they're going to revert the character of Otto into just like a generic Spider-Man villain and do away with everything they've done. That's my biggest fear in comics. But my favorite thing about Peter coming back was the shock in realizing, like what you were saying, Ryley, is that in a lot of ways, Doc Ock did do a better job as Peter Parker than Peter did. Like in his own life. Like, yeah, he came back to a better life. Like when he got back, he was in a better place than when he left. Like
he had Parker Industries. He had
his doctorate.
Yeah, he had a serious relationship, even though that fell apart because it really wasn't his relationship. But he had all of these things that he never had before.
Absolutely.
And it was Otto was the superior Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He had everything. He had it all. And yeah, that was really an interesting take on the whole thing. And now we have him back, and it's like the Parker luck just immediately set back in. And his progress, like, it's not all being undone, but it's just, you know, kind of backpedaling a little bit at a time. So it was really goes to show how well Slott really knew that character. Oh, and just more spoilers, but the whole Clone Saga thing, you don't have to worry. Ben Reilly was not Spider-Man forever.
Okay.
Oh man,
Clone Saga.
Yeah, you know, speaking of the Clone Saga, I think it's so interesting to me how like comics just they try the same idea over and over again until they just feel like they tweak it enough to get it right. But like how, you know, the Ultimate Universe came after the end of MC2, which was their attempt at creating a new canonical, I don't know, a non-in-canon universe.
With like Spider-Girl and stuff.
Yeah, Spider-Girl and the Fantastic Five and all of that, which came after the 2099 universe, which they tried to, you know, kind of create this extra outside of the 616 continuity. But the fact that Ultimate Spider-Man came about as a way to modernize Spider-Man after that's what they tried to do with Ben Reilly. And then they did accomplish it in the 616 with Brand New Day. I've always thought that was so interesting. And it definitely has to do with like execution, specifically the Brand New Day comparison to Ben Reilly. But in Brand New Day, they decided what they wanted to do and they did it in 4 issues. They just did it and it was done and they moved forward. The Ben Reilly thing, like if you've ever read about the history of Ben Reilly and the actual like backroom and editorial talks, it was originally supposed to be a 12-issue series that was essentially the Peter Parker that we've seen since the time that he fought the first clone, and I think it was Spider-Man 129 or 130, somewhere in there, on the smokestacks. You know, he has this fight with a clone that's created by the Jackal, and then the clone falls down and dies. And then Spider-Man goes on with his life. Well, the idea was, hey, Spider-Man's married. He's not relatable to everybody. Like, we should set him back to being single, give him some new friends, and make him relatable. Like, that's the same pitch of Brand New Day.
Yeah.
But they originally said, like, we'll do it in 12 issues, and it would just be done, and Ben Reilly will be the original Spider-Man. Like, instead of the original Spider-Man winning in the clone fight, it was the fake Spider-Man. But that way, the fake Spider-Man, which is the Peter we've read for the last so many years, he can retire. He can go be with Mary Jane. They can have a kid, have a family. He gets the happy ending, and we get the Spider-Man that's not tied down, the single Spider-Man where we can make him relatable again. But that 12-issue arc turned into a 3.5-year convoluted drag-out mess because they got into it and fans hated it. And instead of just like deciding, hey, we're going to do it, this is going forward, they were reading fan feedback and trying to adjust to that fan feedback. And it just like spiraled into just convoluted, just nonsense. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But just nonsense.
That's awesome.
It's just interesting to me that like you see these same ideas resurface. And in this one, they obviously learned from their mistakes and got it more right.
Well, I've got 4 minutes left of this commitment here. So before I start making my goodbyes. What are y'all's? Okay, so Jess, I'm guessing your favorite Spider-Man is going to be original era Stan Lee Spider-Man stuff. Am I wrong with that?
No, you're right.
Okay. Tyler, what would you say is your favorite like run, your favorite era on Spider-Man?
Definitely the Dan Slott era. Unless
Awesome.
that's what you're going to say, in which case I have a different answer.
No, I love that run. I don't. It's hard for me, man. It's really hard for me to pick a favorite era of Spider-Man. I have a lot of love for Roger Stern's stuff. His introduction of the Hobgoblin, such an interesting character. I really think that Conway is one of the strongest Spider-Man writers of all time. The original Clone Saga that you were just talking about is such an amazing story. The whole thing with the Jackal and the clones of like Gwen and Peter and stuff is just a great story. And I think that material, if it's not coming in this fourth omnibus, would be in the one that would follow it. But it's some really solid storytelling. But one era that we haven't touched on in this discussion at all is Michael Straczynski's run. And we kind of have touched on what followed it and came right before Brand New Day by talking about One More Day. But the material that he actually wrote, I really enjoyed that run. I know that it's famous for having the, what is it, Sins Past arc, that
the worst comic book that has ever been released. Yes.
Yeah. But the first part of all of that, when he's with John Romita Jr. on art,
yeah, totally agree.
Man, that
Super
was
solid.
really solid. And I think that was also an example of someone who was really trying to push Peter to the next stage of his life. Having, as a teacher, balancing teaching with being Spider-Man, had him really establish his life. He had his life with Mary Jane, then eventually with the Avengers and stuff like that. And despite Sin's Path, I really liked the whole kind of like culmination of JMS's run, where it goes into like, the revelation of Peter's identity to the world during Civil War, that leading towards, and these are spoilers for anyone who hasn't read these stories, I'm sorry, but that leading into the attempted assassination of Peter and on May's death.
Yeah.
And of course it culminated in One More Day, but just the raw emotion that went into that storyline when Peter's reeling from May's death and trying to get his revenge and stuff was just such an enthralling read for me. I really loved that era, so I wanted to highlight it before I stepped out.
I'm glad you said something about that. It definitely had maybe the most emotional pull of any era overall. Like there was a lot of marital issues with Peter, but like you felt them early on, and the other, like that whole storyline had some real emotional stuff to it. And then like all of it, I feel like that would be a good word to describe his run is just emotion, pushing Peter's emotions, the reader's emotions. I'll never forgive him for Sins Past, but I did really enjoy the first 3/4 of his run.
Well, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna get out of here, guys. I just, before I peaced out, wanted to mention that, and I'm not gonna tell you guys to stop talking about Spider-Man at all, but I really appreciated the hour that we got to discuss, or that I got to discuss with you guys. Obviously, we've got some real web heads here, and I will do my damnedest to get out and see that movie, even if I have to do it myself, because I'm super excited about it. So before Jess asks me, you can find me on my channel, Ryleymo, RYLEYMO, my Instagram that hasn't been updated for a little while, RYLEYM0, and my website, theomnibuscollector.com. Very soon I will be wrapping up the DC Secret Ballot second annual. I'm going to announce a date, a real final date for that, and then in the onset of the new year, I'll start releasing the results on my page, and then the Facebook page, the Omnibus Collectors Comic Swap and community. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to peace out of here and go hang out with my wife for a little bit before we go to sleep.
Thanks, dude.
Adios.
You guys have a good night. Later.
And this would probably be a good time for me to mention InStockTrades.com, where you can get your collected editions up to 50% off. Loyalty discounts add 2% to that. Every quarter, there's an OmniBros code that will get you a percentages off of your books. Over $50 in orders gets you free shipping in the United States. The best customer service around and fabulous patch. I almost made it. Fabulous packaging. That's InStockTrades.com. So,
absolutely crushed it.
Before we sign off, there's Gabe Infinity Watch, who says that Ron Mars has a new Kickstarter ending next week. So we like Ron Mars. Ron Mars was a really great guest on our show. Then Omar and I saw him in Baltimore. So Gabe put up the address for his Kickstarter, and we feel strongly that you should support Ron in anything he does. So there's, I appreciate Gabe putting that up. There's the Kickstarter right there for Ron Mars. And do you need to go take care of your little sickling?
She's asleep and in bed, thank goodness, but I do have Smash Bros that is not going to leave me alone until I play it for many more hours tonight.
Okay, well, Taylor Brown, I think that I'm losing Tyler, so this Monday I'll make sure we cover all our hauls and reads because I'm losing Tyler to Smash Brothers. That seems to be infecting everybody but me. I'm still on Red Dead Redemption 2 and Horizon Zero Dawn, but everybody seems to be really having fun with Smash Bros.
It is amazing. And I think we should do at some point a round 2 of Spider-Man discussion once we've all seen Spider-Verse and to get into some of the nuts and bolts of like the Ultimate Universe, which we didn't really get to touch on a lot, but I've got mad love for. Even though I hate Bendis, mad love for the Ultimate Spider-Man universe and others. Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up at some point.
That sounds like a good idea. That sounds awesome.
Well, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun. I could just sit here and talk about Spider-Man literally all night. I mean, I basically do that anyway, just no one listens to me. So it's nice to have somebody to talk back to.
I appreciate your coming on. I knew you were the guy to ask to help us with a Spider-Man discussion. And I genuinely appreciate your appearance. And you can find me, Omnidog, on Omnidog's Vault on YouTube. And I have a big chunk of tomorrow that I'm going to devote, and this is probably the 90th time I've said this, to my Instagram, which is Omnidogs_Vault. I've said this for probably 17 weeks in a row now that I'm going to update it. It's just such a put up pictures and not hashtags. It's really annoying. I know that I sound like I'm an old crotchety guy because I am.
I don't even do Instagram really, so you're preaching to the choir here, brother.
All righty. Thank you to the chat. The chat was great tonight, and thank you. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe, and peace and love. Peace and love. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Tyler, for joining.